you must understand that the main barriers to your success are subconscious, meaning they're in your heart. You know, many of us have tried to change our lives either through reading our Bibles, going to retreats and seminars, getting discipled, getting trained, fasting, praying, even going to therapy. But the reason that most of us don't change even after doing all this work, or if we do change, it's only temporary, is though we change the outside, internally we are still conditioned or programmed to keep getting the results we're currently getting. So no matter what the advice, plan, guidance, and accountability you get, unless you're working on changing yourself to be different on the inside, the changes you make will not stick. You see, because we're made up of two very distinct but important parts, a conscious mind and a subconscious mind. You know, the Bible describes it as our mind and our heart, or our free will and our sinful or our fleshly nature. Or sometimes it calls it the inner and the outer man. For today, we're just going to call it the conscious mind, which is your free will, or your subconscious mind, which is your heart. And the conscious mind is the part of us that is logical. It analyzes things, it considers, and it makes decisions. You know, again, this is the part of us that most of us know as our mind or our free will. The subconscious mind is more emotional, instinctual, and it runs everything else in our life. This is the part of us that most of us know as our heart or our sinful nature. You know, there's a book called Flow that I've read that it was discovered that the conscious mind only takes in and processes about 0.001% of the information that is around us. And the subconscious mind, on the other hand, processes the other 99.99% of the information that's around us. And it remembers a whole lot more. You know, as a matter of fact, they did a study one time where they took this woman, they brought her into a busy restaurant, and they had her have a conversation, and the goal was for her to remember as much of that conversation as possible. So after about an hour, they clear out the restaurant, and they ask her a couple questions to see what she recall. Then they put her in a trance. In other words, under hypnosis, she was able to recount everything from a conversation, where before, outside of hypnosis, she was able to get maybe about 70%. But under hypnosis, she was able to recount every single word from her conversation. But not only that, she was able to recount all the different conversations of all the other tables that were around her as well. I mean, this example goes to show you the vast amount of information that our subconscious mind processes. And it generally remembers a whole lot of things. But you know what's interesting? Where do we as people mostly spend most of our time focused on? Where do we spend most of our efforts trying to change? That's right, on our conscious mind, or the surface part of our lives. But the conscious mind is a very small part of us. I mean, it's like an iceberg. Because we only see our conscious side, we think that's all there is to us. But we don't see that there's a massive other side to us that is also running and a lot of times ruining our lives. Our main problem is that we spend most of our time focused on the conscious mind and very little on the subconscious. But what is really running our lives? That's right, our subconscious mind. So we miss out on the part that's controlling 99% of the things that we do. Can you see why there will be a problem as a Christian? That you're trying to pretty much deny yourself and be this Christian person, but inside of you there is all this humongous desire to do the exact opposite. Can you see why that would be a problem? And why many of us cannot have a really hard time staying zealous, wholehearted, and committed disciples for God. Another way to really understand this conscious mind, subconscious mind kind of relationship is the relationship between a captain and his crew. You know, imagine the captain barks out commands. That's the conscious mind. And the crew carries them out. That's the subconscious mind. And even when the captain is not paying attention, the crew is out there just kind of going ahead and doing what it's supposed to do. Now, what do you think would result if the captain decided to bark out an order, but the crew decided to do their own thing? So imagine the captain gives an order, I want to go a certain place, but the crew decides, nah, we're going to kind of do our own thing or go our own way. What's that called? That's right, it's called a mutiny. And what would happen on that ship? That's right, conflict. or there be some really serious problems. You start to understand why we're having such serious problems spiritually. I mean, how successful would we be, or would the captain be, at achieving our goals, dreams, aspirations, or creating the spiritual life that we desire when the crew wants to do its own thing? I mean, have you ever wanted something, but for some reason you keep hitting a ceiling or a wall that won't let you accomplish it? What is that called? That's right. It's called sabotage. You see, you can have great, even noble desires and plans, but if our subconscious mind, meaning your heart or the inner man, is not aligned with your conscious mind, meaning your will, your free will, your mind, it will create an internal conflict that will sabotage many of your plans. And in essence, we'll shoot ourselves in the foot. I mean, you see it all the time in the life of Christians, especially in the life of Christians who are battling certain sins, meaning they keep giving into it over and over again. Or Christians whose zeal has waned. In other words, they were more zealous when they first became Christians than they are now. Well, the question I have for you is this. What is your subconscious mind or your heart truly committed to in your life right now? The best way to tell is by looking at your life. In other words, look at the results you're getting. Your life reveals what your heart is truly committed to. You know, as Jesus said in Matthew chapter 12, verse 33 to verse 35, make a tree good and its fruit will be good. Or make a tree bad and its fruit will be bad, for a tree is recognized by its fruit. You brood of vipers, how can you who are evil say anything good? For out of the overflow of the heart the mouth speaks. The good man brings good things out of the good stored up in him, and the evil man brings evil out of the evil stored up in him. You know what's interesting about this is, imagine all those years that we were in the world. What do you think the world, or what do you think we stored up in ourselves while we were in the world for all those years? Fast forward till now we're trying to live this Christian life, but guess what we still have deep inside of us, stored inside of us? That's right, the evil from the world. So if we desire more wholehearted devotion to God, if you desire a more committed life than the one that you're living currently, you must understand that your desires has outgrown your character. And can you see why this will be a big obstacle in your spiritual life? And now if you don't resolve this conflict that is waging inside of you, what do you think will be the consequences of not taking action? I mean, imagine if you continue to strive for a more devoted, spiritual, wholehearted commitment to God, but you keep hitting a wall. What do you think is going to happen? You know, some people, they get discouraged. Some people, they get angry. Some even leave God and try to escape to alcohol, drugs, work, etc. But you know what most people will do? They'll just say, you know, I guess I was mistaken. And God really doesn't want me to be that committed because it's too hard. Or maybe the Bible is just a good ideal that I can strive for but never achieve. You know what that's called? That's right, making excuses. And then all of a sudden we create this new place that God never intended for us, but which we create to help us feel better about ourselves. And it is called, that's right, lukewarmness. You know, Jesus said it in Revelation chapter 3, verse 14 and 17. He said, to the angel of the church in Laodicea write, these are the words of the Amen, the faithful and true witness, the ruler of God's creation. I know your deeds, that you're neither cold nor hot. I wish you were either one or the other. So because you're lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I'm about to spit you out of my mouth. You know, we create this place that God never intended for our lives, all so that we can feel better about ourselves. You know, where with God, it has always been all or nothing. In other words, give everything to me, surrender everything, or I don't want to have, you can't be a disciple. I mean, Luke 14, verse 33, Luke 9, verse 23 to 26, they all talk about this. But what do? We create a place where, you know what, all is good, none is good, but some is okay. It's like in-between place. Where with God, he has always said that you can't serve two masters. Matthew chapter 6, verse 24. But what do we say? You know what? I guess it's okay to share the throne between Jesus' desire for our lives and our own desires for our lives. Where with God, we say, you know, our old self was crucified. Romans 6, verse 3 to 4. But for us, we kind of resurrect our old self to live side by side with Jesus in our lives. But the question we need to ask ourselves is this: does God accept lukewarmness in our lives? I mean, think about it. After Jesus died on a cross, do you think God would accept anything less than a wholehearted commitment to him? I always think about it like this. Imagine if you wanted to get married. Well, some of us are married. Just imagine back to the time when the person first proposed to you or you proposed to the other person. And you say something like, oh, I want to marry you. I want to be with you for the rest of my life. And then your counterpart says, oh, I would love to marry you and be with you for the rest of your life, as long as I only have to be faithful to you 364 days out of the year. But that one day, you got to let me do whatever I want. I want to go out. I don't have to come home. I can go out and sleep with other people. It's okay, but I will be so wholeheartedly committed to you for 364 days out of the year. I have a question for you. Would you marry that person? Why not? Then do you think God should settle for our 364 days? Do you really want to settle for lukewarm Christianity? Do you think God will accept it? If you wouldn't accept a lukewarm spouse, what makes you think that God will? So if you truly want to achieve your desires of a godly, wholehearted commitment to God, the one that God expects from us, what do you think needs to happen? That's right. You need to break through the barriers that are keeping you in the lukewarm zone. And how do we do this? Well, Paul said it best in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 22 to 24, when he said, you were taught with regard to your former way of life to put off your old self, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires, to be made new in the attitude of your minds, and to put on the new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. Here Paul gives the formula that will help us not only get our minds right with God, but also our hearts as well. Number one, to put off the old self, which is being corrupted with its deceitful desires. And what is our old self? That's right. All of the beliefs and sins and things and desires that we've stored up in ourselves when we were in the world, that it's still living in our subconscious. We need to put off our old self. Number two, to be made new in the attitude of our minds, meaning to change the way that we think. And then number three, to put on the new self, which is being created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness.